So the police department just released the official probable cause statement that essentially confirms that young Ant Jefe from the No Jumper podcast is very likely going to spend the rest of his adult life incarcerated in a California prison facility. And I need to be completely honest with you about what this court paperwork actually shows. I have genuine affection and respect for young Ant Jefe as a person, and I believe he is fundamentally a good human being at his core. But he made an absolutely catastrophic decision on the evening of January 31st, 2026, that has permanently altered the trajectory of his entire life in a way that cannot be recovered from or overcome through any legal defense that his attorneys might mount in court. When the initial reports first started circulating that young Ant Jefe had been arrested for allegedly participating in the homicide of Carl Welch, his family members and representatives came out publicly and insisted that he was completely innocent, and that this was a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. They claimed that young Ant Jefe was simply present at the scene, but did not participate in any of the violence that occurred.
He did 8 years in the federal prison because his people in his community told on him. See, this is why you know he's not using his mind and his brain. If they told on you once, they're telling you again. And then reading this paperwork that's up, to go on the 100 Show IG channel, you'll see it up, is one of his homeboys telling on him. See, 3 people got arrested. 2 still in there. 1 they let go 2 days later. The one that they say Ant Jefe instructed to go over there and search dude's car and get the bag of money that everybody knows he keeps in there as he accumulates his monthly rent to pay for his space in that lot. Oh, it also says Ant Jefe's on video assaulting this man and hitting him in his upper body area, head, chest, so on and so forth. So this is why the million got bumped up to $2,050,000, because not only are you the one assaulting the man, one of their assailants, but they also saying that you instructed the other man to go and carry out a robbery on this man. Special circumstances.
And that he did not put his hands on anybody or contribute to the circumstances that resulted in someone's death. His family was telling the public that young Ant Jefe was the victim of police misconduct, and that law enforcement was attempting to frame him for a crime that he did not commit, which is why I was genuinely prepared to advocate on his behalf and demand that people listen to the facts of the case before rushing to judgment about his guilt or innocence. But then the official probable cause statement was filed by the detectives and the prosecution, and everything that young Ant Jefe's family claimed happened on that evening is contradicted by what the surveillance footage actually captured on camera. According to the official documentation that was prepared by Detective Rudy Avalar, who has been with the Los Angeles Police Department for 22 years and is assigned to the Robbery and Homicide Division, young Ant Jefe was not just a bystander who happened to be present at the location, but rather he was an active participant and the primary orchestrator of the entire assault and robbery that resulted in Carl Welch's death. The surveillance footage clearly shows young Ant Jefe intervening in the altercation, physically striking the victim while he was on the ground. And most importantly, it shows him directing other gang members to search the victim's vehicle and remove property while Welch was laying on the ground bleeding and unable to defend himself. Do you genuinely believe that young Ant Jefe's attorneys can successfully defend him against surveillance footage that shows his face in his vehicle and his specific actions during the commission of this homicide? Or do you think the evidence is so overwhelming that a jury will convict him regardless of what his defense team argues? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments, because this is a situation where the video evidence appears to be absolutely conclusive and leaves very little room for reasonable doubt about what transpired on that parking lot on January 31st. According to the probable cause statement, when LAPD patrol officers arrived at the location after receiving a 911 call reporting an assault in progress, they discovered that Carl Welch had already been pronounced deceased at the scene by paramedics from the Los Angeles City Fire Department. This is an absolutely shocking level of brutality and violence, because they beat this man so severely and so relentlessly that he did not survive long enough to be transported to the hospital and did not survive long enough for medical professionals to attempt emergency resuscitation procedures. The victim was pronounced dead on arrival at the parking lot, which demonstrates the magnitude and the ferocity of the assault that took place, and it shows that whoever participated in this attack was determined to cause serious bodily injury that would result in the victim's death. When detectives searched Carl Welch's belongings at the crime scene, they recovered his wallet, which allowed them to quickly establish his identity and begin notifying family members and gathering background information about the victim. They recovered broken jewelry and a set of veneers at the scene, which forensic evidence suggests belonged to the victim and indicate the severity of the trauma that Welch experienced during the assault. When Welch's girlfriend was located and approached by police officers, she was noticeably distraught and appeared to be under the influence of either alcohol or illegal drugs, and her demeanor was extremely frantic and confused about what had just happened to her partner. Although she did not personally witness the attack, she provided information to detectives stating that she had been told by an unidentified woman that the victim had been assaulted and beaten up by members of his own gang, which is the 8 Trey Crips organization. The girlfriend specifically stated that the victim had been attacked by his own gang associates, but she would not provide any elaboration or additional details beyond that statement, even when detectives pressed her for more information during questioning. This is particularly significant because it suggests that there may have been an internal dispute or conflict within the gang that resulted in Welch being targeted by his own crew members rather than by external rivals, which changes the narrative from a random robbery to a potentially planned and orchestrated attack motivated by internal gang politics or personal disputes. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because as the legal proceedings against young Ant Jefe unfold and more details become public through discovery documents and court filings, we're going to continue breaking down this case and analyzing what it means for the broader hip-hop community and the No Jumper platform. Subscribe if you want to stay fully informed about every development that comes out regarding young Ant Jefe's defense strategy and how his attorneys plan to challenge the evidence presented by the prosecution. Now, here's where the evidence becomes absolutely devastating for young Ant Jefe and his co-defendants. Because when detectives recovered surveillance footage from the parking lot, they were able to establish a clear timeline of exactly what transpired that evening. Carl Welch arrived at the parking lot location around 6:20 in the evening and appeared to be expecting someone or waiting for some kind of meeting or transaction to occur. The first suspect arrived at approximately 7 o'clock in the evening, which means there was a significant time gap between Welch's arrival and when the other individuals began showing up, which suggests that this was a scheduled gathering rather than a random or spontaneous encounter between strangers. More suspects continued to arrive and congregate around the victim's vehicle for approximately 10 minutes, and during this entire period, Welch appeared calm and familiar with at least some of the individuals who were arriving on the scene, which suggests that he knew these people and was expecting them to be there. The assault did not occur until approximately 9:45 in the evening, which means the entire group congregated together for nearly 3 hours before the violence actually erupted, which raises serious questions about whether this was a planned discipline procedure within the gang that went horribly wrong, or whether it was a premeditated attack that was always intended to result in Welch being severely beaten and robbed. The surveillance footage captured the moment when one of the suspects, who was identified as Johnny Great with the gang moniker of Northface, began continuously kicking the victim in the head as Welch lay on the ground unable to defend himself. And this continued kicking was so severe and so relentless that the victim never got back up and never escaped from the assault. The video also captured multiple suspects opening Carl Welch's vehicle while he was laying unconscious and bleeding on the pavement, and they methodically removed property from his car, including the black backpack containing the cash that he kept in his vehicle for his work at the cannabis dispensary. Subscribe to this channel because this case is going to raise serious questions about gang violence in Los Angeles and about how street crews handle internal conflicts and disputes among their own members. And the legal outcome of young Ant Jefe's trial is going to have implications for how prosecutors approach felony murder charges when multiple individuals are involved in a coordinated attack. The question of whether young Ant Jefe is ultimately convicted and sentenced will depend on how effectively his defense team can challenge the surveillance footage and the witness identification by the gang task force officer who identified him at the scene. The gang task force officer who reviewed the surveillance footage was extremely familiar with the 8 Trey Crips gang and their documented members through years of working in gang enforcement in Los Angeles, and he identified young Ant Jefe as one of the individuals captured on video arriving at the scene in a white Range Rover without visible license plates. The officer testified that he had prior interactions with young Ant Jefe and knew him to be a member of the 8 Trey Crips with the moniker Ant. And most importantly, he identified young Ant Jefe on the surveillance video as the individual who appeared to be intervening in an initial argument between one suspect and Carl Welch before the full assault began. According to the video, young Ant Jefe initially appeared to be trying to prevent the altercation from escalating into violence, which could suggest that he was trying to de-escalate the situation and encourage a peaceful resolution. But once the fighting actually started, young Ant Jefe immediately jumped into the assault and began striking the victim with his hands, while Welch was already on the ground. What makes this situation even worse for young Ant Jefe from a legal perspective is that after he finished striking the victim, he returned to his white Range Rover and appeared to communicate with another gang member named Irvin Theus, who was sitting in a gold Mercedes that was parked directly adjacent to Welch's vehicle. The surveillance footage clearly shows young Ant Jefe pointing directly toward Welch's vehicle, which establishes that he was providing direction and instruction to Theus about where to find the property that needed to be stolen from the victim's car. Theus then exited his vehicle and approached Welch's car and removed the black backpack from the rear seat, and he then handed that backpack directly back to young Ant Jefe, which shows that Theus was acting under the direct instruction and direction of young Ant Jefe. This is not a case where someone was just swept up in the moment of a spontaneous altercation, because young Ant Jefe's actions demonstrate deliberate planning and orchestration of both the assault and the subsequent robbery of the victim. Now, from a legal standpoint, this is where young Ant Jefe's bond got raised from $1 million to $2,050,000, because the prosecution argued that young Ant Jefe was not just an equal participant in the assault, but rather he was the primary organizer and coordinator of the entire operation. When prosecutors can demonstrate that one individual is giving orders and directing the actions of other gang members, that person faces much more serious sentencing exposure and much more intense scrutiny from judges and juries compared to individuals who were simply following orders or participating in the assault without being in a leadership position. Young Ant Jefe essentially positioned himself as the leader of this operation, which means he will likely receive more severe punishment if convicted compared to his co-defendants who were merely following his instructions and directives. Peace.